Hello, I'm Paul Briley, and you're listening to Off the Comma. I'm a human who cares about supporting other humans. On this podcast, we explore all facets of what it means to feel stuck in life. We talk with people just like us who found themselves sitting on a comma and not knowing where to go next. We'll unpack the experience with them, where they've been stuck, what it feels like, what they experienced, and what they learned. My goal is to inspire you by seeing yourself in others. I believe that when we feel more connected and seen, magic can happen. And remember, if you find yourself sitting on a comma in your life, you can also talk to me without a microphone. To explore coaching with me and getting off the comma in your own life, check out my information and book a call with me at offthecomma.com. And I'm also doing something different. I'm curating my own sponsor community, local businesses and professionals who I handpick and who align with our vision here. Be sure to check them out, learn more about them on my website and my YouTube channel. In the meantime, let's get into this week's conversation. All right, everyone, welcome back for another exciting episode of Off the Comma. This podcast is the gift that just continues to give, and I'm so grateful for it. And this week, we are talking to another guest, very fortunate to be talking to another guest who lives in a different country from the one that I live in. Our guest is coming to us from the United Kingdom this week, and we're going to be talking to Paula Ahlberg. And I know of Paula through some kind of shared and mutual circles, but I've never really gotten to spend time with Paula and get to know her. And if you've been listening regularly, you'll notice that for the last handful of episodes, I've been very, very fortunate to be meeting new people and hearing stories that I've never been exposed to at all. And I'm super grateful for that and excited for that. And this week will be no exception. So I'm looking forward to getting to meet her through her story. She and I haven't really talked about her story at all. And so this will be as fresh for me right now as it will be for those of you who are listening to it. Now I'm going to shut up. Paula, welcome to the podcast today. Thank you for being here. And we're going to jump in with introductions. If you wouldn't mind telling us first, like, how would you like to be known? And then you can kind of share with us what else you would like for us to know about you.
So, hi, Paul. Lovely to meet you. And I'm Paula, and I am a mother of two beautiful grown-up daughters, Hannah, who's 30, who's just got married, and Emma. I would describe myself as a spiritual being. I'm a yoga teacher. I'm a Pilates teacher. And I would say that I just have a zest for life and adventures, trying new things. But that isn't to say that trying new things isn't without being scared of them to begin with. So I often go through phases of talking myself out of doing things and believe that it's beyond my capacity, but I have a great way of pushing through, which is why I'm still here, and you will hear from my story. So I'm a yoga teacher, and I've been a yoga teacher for 30 years. I've worked in the fitness industry all of my lifetime. I started at Pineapple Dance Studios when I was 18. I'm now 57. I moved into the yoga industry around 30 years ago. I've always been interested in wellness from not just the physical perspective, but the emotional, the mental perspective. And I'm really excited that I can see, it's probably the wrong word to say that I'm excited to see that there has been such an explosion in problems with mental health that people are starting to recognize that there's no point having a strong body if you don't have a stable mind. So that's what I'm really, really interested in. I opened my studio, the Wellbeing Warehouse, 12 years ago. And we're a studio specializing in all types of yoga, mindfulness, meditation, and the Pilates reformers machines. We also have rooms that we rent out. So there's a hairdresser in there, there's a beauty lady, there's an acupuncture therapist.
Mhm.
So I tried to create this hub of wellness under one roof. So
Mm.
that's kind of me in a
Okay.
nutshell.
Nice. Okay. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about kind of how some of these things came to be potentially through your story. Before we get into the 5 questions that we ask in every episode, I always like to start with each guest first and ask you to think ahead to the next 30, 40 minutes or so. And your telling of this story that you're going to share with us, what would be your intention for yourself today?
For myself today, I would like to give myself an affirmation
Mhm.
that I really, really am stronger than I would ever believe and move beyond sometimes my limiting beliefs about myself.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what I would really like to achieve today.
Something so many of us can relate to, right? My intention is to support you and your intention, create a space for you to be able to tell your story and accomplish this. And that out there, someone hearing your story will see a little bit of themselves in you and your story, feel a little bit more connected, a little less alone. And in the best of cases, feel a little bit more inspired and empowered to maybe go out and do something that they have been wanting to do for themselves. Let's jump into the first question. All right, Paula, where in your life have you found yourself sitting on a comma?
I've found myself sitting on a comma several times in my life, but it's been even more predominant over the last 4 years since uh, a surgery and events that have not had a positive outcome since my surgery.
Mm,
So I became very, very stuck because I believed that I was no longer worthy and capable of doing any of the things that I so love to do within my work, but not just
mm,
my work life, but my normal life. So that's been very, very dominant, a huge part of my life, and still is to a certain extent over the
mhm,
last 4 years.
mm. Now, obviously, we're going to expand and dig deeper
Yeah.
into kind of what all happened and what the experience was like for you. I'm already curious, and thank you for kind of opening the story for us. That there's this surgery, which sounds like it was not something within your control, and then there's this feeling of not feeling worthy and capable. And
Mhm.
so I'm curious to see how those come together. Tell us whatever, take us in whatever direction you'd like to. What happened? What had you feeling stuck? What had you kind of coming into these states of feelings and emotions? And kind of just give us a little bit more of the details.
So, as I said, I opened my well-being business 12 years ago, and I was actually very, very much actively a part of it in that I was teaching a lot of the yoga classes. And when I had my surgery, where let's just say things didn't go as planned,
Mm,
and I was left from being an incredibly fit, able bodied person to somebody who, for almost a year, I couldn't even walk. I
mm,
was in debilitating pain. The pain caused me emotional pain. And I felt that I would be a lousy ambassador for wellness to show up the way that I was.
Mm.
So really that's what happened to me there. And I think that's really because so many of us, we live in a way that we think people expect us to be. We
Mm.
think that we should be, but how do we know? Because it's not a
Mm.
lived experience. So I guess I was living a lie to myself because a lot of us, and I'm sure people can relate to this that have had accidents, had things gone wrong with them, had illnesses, that whatever happens, you are still exactly the same person. And
Mm.
actually, there are people that still want to be around that same person, regardless of. So, does that make sense to you?
It does so far. And obviously, all of us are going to draw kind of our own assumptions or kind of extract our own meaning from it. But what we really want to do is find out what makes sense to you and what it means to you. So what I'm hearing you say, if I can reflect for a moment,
Mhm.
and anytime I reflect, whatever I say, if I'm misstating or if I'm off base, correct me. So you've had this situation, this surgery. It didn't go as planned, and now it has compromised you physically.
Mhm.
And it sounds like because of the length and the depth of that physical limitation, these consequences of this surgery, now you went into your belief space. And what it sounds to me like, correct me if I'm wrong, is on the one hand, there's everything you were feeling in the moment and feeling, compromised and limited and so forth. But it exposed this belief that you held that in order to be an ambassador for well-being, you had to be 100%, you had to be fit, you had to be
Absolutely.
flawless. Mm.
Absolutely. And actually, um, through some therapy, through a lot of self study, I began to realize that this wasn't just something in the last 4 years. This is something about myself that I have struggled with for many, many years,
Mm.
where I put an unrealistic expectation on myself. And rather than feel that I'm going to let people down, but actually, even more so, myself down, I avoid the situation. And
Mm.
I've realized this has happened at many, many times in my life. I would say, even from when I was a teenager, if I'm really
Mhm.
honest.
Mhm.
And I think, this is the case for a lot of people. Sometimes it takes one major event or catalyst to make you then look back in your life at how maybe you've reacted to things in the past. And there is definitely a pattern in my life.
Mm.
There's definitely a pattern. And, to set off these, yeah, unrealistic expectations puts a hell of a lot of pressure on us. A hell of a lot of
Mm.
pressure on us. And so, the easiest thing is to walk away and go, well, I can't do that. And that's what I've always done. That's what I've always
Mm.
done. I've taken what I've thought is the easy option and walked away. But actually, it's been the more difficult option because then I've had to sit with the fact, oh, I wish I'd have done that because I probably could have done that.
Mm. It's really interesting to me in your story. Definitely I can hear you, sharing with us how the realization that you've come to was, okay, I've had these patterns, I've had these expectations that I've taken quote unquote the easy path and walked away from things, which then left me with the hard path of regret and questioning. It's so fascinating to me that all of this bubbled up at a time when you were recovering from this surgery, when the limitation was legitimate.
Yeah. No, I know.
Mm,
I know. I know. And something that I've realized that has gone on for way too many years in my life is this striving towards being perfect. And ultimately, perfect doesn't exist. It doesn't
mm,
exist. There is no perfect. But you are perfect if you just have a contentment with exactly where you are. And that's something that I've now realized. Okay, this is me. This is how I show up today.
mhm.
And it's enough. It's enough.
So tell us a little bit more about, let me go to the second question, and then you can go back and forth. Obviously, that usually happens. As you look back on this comma that you were sitting on, and some of these things that you've revealed to us have come from it, kind of unpacking the experience of sitting on the comma a little bit further. The second question is, what did that create for you when you were sitting on this comma?
It I mean, it almost made me feel like I was isolated away from everyone else around me. And I remember
Mm,
just looking around me and thinking, well, you know what? Everyone else seems to manage to get by and pursue their dreams and do whatever else they want to do. So actually, it felt really bad, really, really bad. It
mm,
made me angry, and I'm not an angry person. It made me angry. It made me resentful, and it made me have a lot of self-doubt, actually. So it was not
mm.
good. It was not good.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a lot of kind of maybe resentment of the situation, and the air quotes, right? This shouldn't be happening. Um, Expectations, like you've used the word expectation several times. It's like now here you have this ailment, this disablement in this temporary situation, and now you're up against
Yeah,
expectations
yeah,
again.
yeah. And
Mm,
actually,
mm,
expectations is something that even went back into my childhood. As I said, I'm 57. So when I was a child at school, things like dyslexia, ADHD, they weren't picked up on. So I
mhm,
just always thought I was stupid. And so
mm,
I felt insignificant. And if there was ever anything where I could step out of that sense of being insignificant or almost hiding, I I found it very, very difficult to do that. Very, very difficult to do that. And the easiest
mm,
option, I thought, was to just hide. And I've noticed this
mm,
pattern that I've done this so many times in my life. And being around people and being aware of this happening with me, I've actually started to notice it in other people. That sometimes
mm.
we think the easiest option is to just stay in the comfort zone. The comfort zone's
Mhm.
frustrating, right?
Mm,
Because if we have a burning desire to do something, to move, to, as you say, step off the comma, um,
mhm.
what's the worst that could happen if we try and it doesn't work? That's what I have to say
Yeah.
now. What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
So, looking back on this experience and any others, how did you know you were hiding, or how did you come to the realization that you had been hiding?
Because I would see other people around me doing things that I knew I was capable of and thinking, well, actually, they're no different to me. They've managed to do it, but I've gone into that typical sense of fear. And I think a lot of it for me has been fear, actually.
Mm.
Fear of the unknown. Fear of the
Mm.
unknown.
What is it about the unknown that would lead you to fear? I mean, take that a little bit deeper for us.
A a fear that I will fail,
Mm.
and through the failing that I will feel intimidated, that I will then become insignificant again,
Mm.
like I was as a child, or that's how I felt. That's how I felt.
Mm. That's at least the second time that you've brought that up, the second time that I've counted the feeling insignificant like you did it as a child. What's the significance of feeling insignificant for you?
Feeling that for me, it's actually important that I'm acknowledged, that I'm noticed, that it's not that I have to ride high in the joy of people saying, oh, you're a great teacher, this is great about you. But just what's really significant for me is that people recognize actually it's been quite a lot of work to get to where you are. And it's
Hmm.
almost like that reward and that verification of, well done, Paula, you did it, you really did it. Yeah, it's quite difficult to describe, but it's, yeah.
Yeah, well, absolutely, right. And certainly we can sit here and explore it and kind of peel it a little bit, and I can ask the questions, but there's no way to simplify these things, right? And yet I definitely see this relationship between the feeling insignificant, wanting to be seen, acknowledged, and validated, this relationship, or maybe what I'm seeing, again, you tell me, is it seems like there definitely is this looking outward at other people to kind of gauge, if you will, your own feelings within you against what other people are doing, are capable of, and then wanting validation from those outside sources too, to prove what you're capable of. Or at least maybe that was the case in the past. I don't know if that's true now. I don't know if that's true at
No, I
all.
mean, no, I mean, you know what? Even now, it's only probably in the last not even year, probably 6 months, that I have taken a little bit more control
Mhm.
over my life. I'm in pain. I have different levels of pain every day. Yes, it can be debilitating at times, but I allowed it to stop me from doing things. But now I've stepped back into teaching yoga again,
Mhm.
which is my greatest love. I am an incredible yoga teacher.
Mm.
I know that. I don't actually need anybody to tell me that. Um, but and it's not that I need people around me to say, it's so lovely to see you back. You're a fantastic teacher. I it's just something that I've had to do, um, because I knew that if I didn't take that step, I would go further and further away from going out of the comfort zone,
Mhm.
and I would become what I felt was insignificant, and that's not anything that I want to happen ever again.
Mhm. And to be clear, when you say had I not taken that step, you're talking about it's time for me to go back to teaching. I need to get back into my
Yeah,
teaching. And if you hadn't taken that step,
100%.
then you could
Yeah,
have continued down a slide that you might not have come back from.
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, for 10 years, I've taught people to be yoga instructors. I've actually trained 160 people to be yoga
Mm.
teachers. And I actually cancelled my class this spring because I told myself that I wasn't capable of doing it.
Mm.
And yes, I regretted it, but it's fine. That was then. Now we're moving to a better place. And there's a new one scheduled for next spring. Oh,
Mm.
because I'm coming back. But I think we also have to give ourselves a little bit of space to question things, and that's okay. It's okay to have a little bit of self-doubt.
Mhm.
I think if you're overconfident, maybe you're not the type of person that people gravitate towards.
Mm.
Self-doubt's good because it means that you're very passionate about what you do and what you want to pursue. But now I've come back into the studio, which is my great, great love. And I can't even describe mentally what that does to me. It's
Mm.
like stepping stepping onto the most beautiful island in paradise for me, which sounds very extreme, but I'm now thinking, why have I waited for 4 years to do this?
Mm.
Yeah,
Mm.
what made me stay out of this thing that I love doing for 4 bloody years? Are you nuts, Paula?
What did you come up with? What is the answer to that question?
So the answer to that question is I probably just wasn't ready, but
Mm.
also the biggest thing was I didn't believe in myself. I didn't
Mm.
believe in myself. Um, and I still had this strive towards a certain ideal that I thought my audience around me was expecting. And I just have sat with it and said, well, you know what? Everyone has their own shit going on in their life. And your shit is you have pain, you walk with a limp. But actually, you're no different a person at all. So, do you honestly think when you walk in the studio, people are going to look primarily at the way that you limp? Aren't they just happy that you're in there to give them your teachings? And
Mm.
this is exactly what I do, Paul. I talk to myself. And
Mhm.
actually, I think talking to yourself is really good. So, yeah, I've given myself that talking to since that and just said, well, isn't this great? I
Yeah.
can do this.
You answered a question that I had already,
Okay.
which was, what shifted for you? How did you go from the place of not being ready and self-doubt to doing it? And you just answered that question.
I gave myself good talking to.
Yeah. And it also strikes me as you were describing, walking into that studio and now you walk with a limp and you have pain.
Yeah.
What came up for me is, and isn't that what a lot of people go to yoga for? Is
Totally.
they're there to help them
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
manage their
yeah.
their bodies, right? And now you're modeling for them exactly why, yoga's even there.
Yeah. So, for me, I just thought, well, people have pain and pain is physical or emotional, right?
Mm-hmm.
And actually, then my teachings become my lived experience. I can teach this so well now because actually I have a lived experience of suffering from both the physical and the emotional perspective. So, you know what? I'm going to be the greatest teacher now.
Mm-hmm.
So, you sometimes you have to take what you could look at as a negative, a difficult situation, and say, okay, well, what can I use as a positive? What can I learn from this? I
Mm-hmm.
have learned a lot. I
That's perfect. Actually, that's perfect because that is the third question, and that's what I want to ask next. You just queued it up beautifully. So, Paula, what have you learned about yourself as a result of sitting on this comma?
So I have learned that everyone in the world, nobody, it's almost like we can look at life as being a road, but that road is always going to have bumps in it. But it's how you respond to those bumps that really affects the journey to get to the destination.
Hmm.
So, what I have really learned is that, just like they say in the Buddhist perspective, that of impermanence, nothing is permanent. You know, the body is not permanent. My face, the way my face looks now, we age, things happen. But actually, what I've really learned is if you can learn to like yourself, um, if you can really acknowledge the fact that everyone else walking around you in your bubble has their own problems,
Hmm.
be it physical, be it emotional, everyone has something going on. So actually, I'm no different to anybody else. Maybe mine just shows up in a different way. So that I'm can actually say I'm quite grateful for that I've learned
Hmm.
that you really are much stronger than you would ever believe you could be, but you have to believe in yourself.
Hmm. It's so I'll self-reference for a moment. Like this message of everybody's got their own shit and I'm really no different than anybody else. Everybody has a story to tell, and some stories are more, I'll use the word dramatic in purely just a descriptive tone, but some stories are more dramatic than others. And I think that's one of the things that I have learned or am learning in life is, like, I used to believe that if I thought of myself as no different than anybody else, that was in some way a kind of a come down or something like that. But I tell you what, as I've gotten older and as I've realized it, been forced to realize it, whatever you want to call it, right? Like realizing that I'm no different from anybody else has been so freeing
Yes.
and so liberating and is profound and in completely different ways than I ever thought it would be. Like, it's not some big dramatic enlightened moment or anything like that. It's just like, man, if I just quit worrying about how I might be different from other people or how other people are different from me, it's just less fucking work.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Because it does. It's really fucking hard work when you just you're trying to be this certain something that you can't be because you've got
Mhm.
whatever shit going on in your life.
Mm.
Well, probably every other person around you has as well, and that's
Yeah.
what I've realized. We're no different.
Yeah.
We're all the same.
And the more time we spend in their files, the less time we're spending in our own,
Yep,
right? Yeah.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Paula, the fourth question is, looking back at this comma that you sat on or sitting on, what has changed for you as a result of it?
For me, I have more belief in myself. I no longer have this striving for perfection because I know it doesn't exist. Um, I have a greater belief in what I'm capable of doing. And I have more clarity, I guess you could say. I really have a sense of clarity because I've started to recognize that when those limiting beliefs pop in again, I know they're there. And I say,
Hmm.
oh, okay, you're there, little limiting belief mouth. I'm not going to listen to you today. I'm just going to follow my path, actually. So that's been good. I've really learned that.
Hmm. Since you brought up this point of clarity, what is clearer for you now?
What is clearer for me now is that I am greater than my body, what my physical
Mm.
body is able to do. Um, and I am greater than what I thought I was. I am way more capable than I gave myself credit for.
Mm. This theme shows up a lot in the stories that people bring to us. And some other guests have specifically brought this kind of a story forward before too. So I'm I so appreciate and am kind of in awe of the similarities, and yet each of you has your own unique experience with it. But it seems like kind of what's coming up to me is when you say I'm greater than my physical body, and I'm thinking about your story, and I'm thinking about Flame's story, and I'm thinking about some of our other guests from earlier on, and it's like, it's not just folks like yourself who have experienced extreme physical limitation or some dramatic shift in your capabilities or abilities or what have you. Anybody can apply that. If today my body is just sore and stiff, I'm greater than my physical body. If, I'm
Yeah.
skinnier or heavier than I want to be, I'm greater than my physical body. If I am shorter or taller than I want to be, I'm greater than my physical body. It just, and on and on and on and on. So it's like just that I think about all the situations that I might go through in a given day where I'm just being a little bitch about, my body or my appearance. And it's like, you're greater than your physical body. So there you go. There's my little, that's what I've taken from this part of your story.
Thank you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, and yeah, absolutely. And I think, unfortunately, the media sells this ideal, doesn't it? Hey, you
Mm-hmm.
don't look this way. If you can't do this, then you can't do this. Um, so sometimes you just have to distance yourself and sit and be with yourself. I meditate a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And, in those times of meditations, I place my hand on my heart. And, my question I have, which actually in a lot of Eastern religions they use, rather than how are you today, how is your heart today? So I think
Mm-hmm.
that that's something that's really nice that we can all ask ourselves is how is your heart really today? And what would serve you best, but also be about the greater good of others around you.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's a great teaching that I not only bring to yoga, but I try as best to live that my thoughts, words, and actions aren't just selfless, but they really are about the greater good of all.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if more people could do that, we'd be in a nicer world.
For sure. And this opening up to things we can learn from each other too. I so appreciate you making that reference to other religions and the way that they will ask questions or other cultures, right? I'm studying another language right now, and even it's not just the words, it's just not the language that you learn so much more too, right? Like, for example, I'm learning Spanish, and in Spanish this distinction that just sits with me, I've mentioned this in other episodes too, like here in the United States, I am afraid, I am hungry, I am tired, I am this. And like in Spanish, it's no, I have hunger, I have fear, it pains me, my body, not I hurt, right? And so on the one hand, you can say, oh, Paul, that's just semantics and that's how the language
Yeah,
is built. But it's like, no, there's something in that it's like
it is.
how the language defines the distinction between who you are and what you have.
Yeah. So I teach a lot of mindfulness, and One of the, when we're looking at the four foundations of mindfulness meditation, and the Dr. John Kabat-Zinn from Massachusetts, he really brought mindfulness into the mainstream through the West. And, the one thing that when they're looking at working with the body, and he worked a lot with patients in chronic pain, was rather than saying, sitting there and saying, I have pain in my lower back, you flip it around and you just say, pain is present.
Mm.
And it completely changes the pain. Pain is present, not because otherwise you become the pain.
Mm-hmm.
More energy you give it, the worse it becomes. And that is, I promise you, I've put that into action, living in me.
Well, it changes the experience with it too, right? I would imagine it's like versus, oh, this is how I am. I've got to do something about it versus, no, it's kind of here in the room with me and it's affecting me.
But it's not who I am.
Yeah. Nice. Paula, the fifth question, wide open. What does getting off the comma look like for you?
So for me, it gives me inspiration to move forward in life, and to move forward in life with ease and with a sense of being completely content with however that might look. So yeah, it's a huge thing for me. It's actually creating more space in my life to pursue more things. So it's huge for me.
So that's interesting, right? Because so much of the story that you've been sharing with us was times when you felt like you had or wanted less because of fear and holding yourself back. And now that you actually have these physical kind of ailments, these things that are affecting your life, you're actually in a space now of being more accepting, more open, pushing through. Maybe that's not even the right word, but allowing yourself to pursue more and feeling more open and more capable.
Absolutely. It's only like this morning I was at work in the studio, and one of my clients said to me, "Oh, I don't know how you do as much as you do. You've taught so many classes today. Are you in pain?" And I just laughed and I said, "Yeah, I am. It's bubbling there in the background like it always is. But I love my work because I'm offering a service to help other people." And I said, and now I've stepped out of my comfort zone and I'm beginning to organize retreats as well. So I'm going off for a meeting this afternoon with somewhere where I'm running a retreat. So actually, because I'm so excited about the future, what I'm living with every day doesn't bother me quite as much.
I was going to say, it's like what strikes me is like, a potential response to this person could easily be, how do you think I live with this? What do you think it is that I'm living for? Like, this is the solution. You remind me of, it was middle school, Spanish teacher who shared with us at some point during the course that she had a bad car accident at some point in her life. And while they were able to repair so many things, she lived with a constant and persistent headache for the rest of her life. There was never a moment in her day that she didn't have a headache. And that was just something that they couldn't fix and that she was going to be living with. And that was the first time I had ever been exposed to someone who literally pain was a part of their everyday existence. And to wrap my head around that as a young child, what that must be like. And so, you're describing something similar here.
Yeah. But it isn't, I'm not pain. Yeah, there's pain present, but I still have a wonderful life. I'm now beginning to do some really exciting things with my work life. I'm even doing some other exciting things with my personal life. I just only this week I've started doing a jewelry making course. This summer I started cold water plunging and wild swimming in lakes. And, so you have to step out of your comfort zone
Mm-hmm.
because the comfort zone would just hold you back. And
Mm-hmm.
actually you feel you really grow when you do step out of those zones, because you just suddenly say, wow, I did that. And it wasn't actually as much of a problem as I thought it would be.
Yeah. Yeah. Paula, I love this, and thank you for sharing this story with us. Obviously, there's a lot in the story, that's very personal for you, and I so appreciate it because I know that this will resonate with so many people who hear this story. As we kind of move to close the podcast, these last two things that we'll talk about. First of all, we'll put this information in the show notes, but where can people find you? People who are curious to learn more, maybe they want to reach out to you, just want to see what you're up to. Where can we look you up?
Yeah, so my studio is called Wellbeing Warehouse, and it's in Newmarket, which is quite close to Cambridge in the UK. I am hopefully one of my things on my to-do list. I will hopefully begin to create a library of online yoga and meditation classes, which obviously you can do anywhere all over the
Mm-hmm.
world. So yeah, it's mainly through Wellbeing Warehouse. You can get hold of me just through, my own email, Paula at
Yeah.
Wellbeing Warehouse. Yeah.
And you're on Instagram and Facebook as well.
I'm on Instagram and Facebook as well, but yes, we have a Wellbeing Warehouse Instagram page, but I have my own. I'm called the Everywhere Yogi on
Mm.
Instagram. So, yeah, you can follow me on Instagram and you will be able to see a certain amount of my story there. You'll see there are big chunks where I've never posted anything because probably the self-doubting, I feel sorry for myself and I don't want to be in this life anymore has come
Mm.
again.
Mhm.
But it hasn't been there for a long time now.
Okay. Yeah. Which, kind of reinforces something too. This is why social media is so interesting, right? Because, and people talk about this all the time. This isn't new, but what you see there isn't necessarily real or whatever. But you can also find realness in what you see there, right? If somebody that you follow
Yeah,
regularly and so forth, and suddenly there's a gap or what have you,
yeah.
don't jump to conclusions. You never know what that gap means or what it's telling. And it's also like, not any of our business either. So
No,
I appreciate that.
no.
Last thing, Paula. So you obviously have come here and shared your story with us today, and that's what this podcast is all about: is lifting up others and giving a space for storytelling and shared experiences. And we couldn't do that without this thing that I do called acknowledgments, which is, as you look at your circle, who else would you like to give a voice to, boost, lift up? And that could be causes, organizations, other creators, people in your family. Who would you like to acknowledge today?
I would really love to acknowledge, of course, my incredibly supportive husband, Magnus, and my two beautiful daughters, Hannah and Emma, primarily. But also, I have found who originally I thought they were mainly clients and work colleagues, have now become two great friends. So Pema, I met her on one of my yoga teacher training courses she came on. And then it turns out that she's a Buddhist, she's a mindfulness teacher. So she began lecturing on my courses. And she has become a really, really dear friend of mine, very, very dear friend of mine. She's often pulled me out when I've been chronically depressed and haven't even wanted to leave the house,
Mhm.
along with Samantha, who again I met on a yoga course, but has become an incredibly dear friend to me, who again checks in with me all of the time. And, we actually, Sam and I, we meet for brunch every Saturday now. And it's
Nice.
kind of a check-in just to see where you're at. And even though I've been saying, I'm going to do this and this and this with the business, she's given me a little nudge to say, are you doing it? So yeah, I think sometimes when you are really stuck, if you have a really dear friend that you can share with things you might like to do, if they really are a genuine, very dear friend, they will help to push you in that direction, which I guess she has.
Friends and accountability partners, and those don't always have to be the same thing, but you can certainly allow them to be the same thing and come to agreements with each other. And like you said, my coach trainer, Cami McLaren, she's been a guest. She's been acknowledged by many people on here, but I'll never forget one of the things that she said in one of our classes together back during the training program was, if you're harboring a secret goal or wish or ambition, something you really wanted to do, she's like, say it out loud, say it to as many people as possible. And there's your accountability.
Yeah,
Nice.
Absolutely. And I think, with podcasts, hey, say it. You believe in it. Say it.
Yeah. The power of voice to get yourself through the limiting voices within, right? Paula, thank you for being with us today. I wish you a wonderful end to your week and a great week ahead. And thank you again for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
What an honor it is for me to witness these powerful stories. I hope you feel the same way too. Think about what you learned from this conversation. What stood out for you? What challenged you? What inspired you? And I encourage you to write it down in some form of journaling and reflection. Surprises can reveal themselves to you when you do this. And if you were moved by today's conversation, pass it along to someone you care about. Let's spread the word. Let's continue to build connection. And if you do discover something you'd like to unpack further, book a call with me and let's talk about it. My links are in the show notes. Be sure to like this episode, follow the podcast here on this platform and social media at Off the Comma. And feel free to comment and interact with these posts and episodes. Check out my website for workshops, events, and my sponsor community. I'm covering the costs of production by curating my own sponsors who align with our vision. Be sure to check them out. They're all powerful people and businesses. Thank you for listening to this episode of Off the Comma. As always, keep noticing and keep listening.